Right now. All right, so welcome everybody to tonight's LCAP PAC meeting. Just a real quick housekeeping item. I think everybody's familiar with this, so I'll just do a run through real quick. We're using chat. If you would like to enter questions into the chat box, if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand using the icon. Selecting the hand icon after you select the reactions. Feel free when we call on you to come off mute, and if you'd like, you can also start your video if you'd like us to see you as well. When you're finished speaking, we just ask that you mute yourself again. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, Ms. Schnepp.
Hey there, and welcome everybody. I wanted to thank you all for being with us tonight. And Mr. Nelson, I think you wanted to have the first.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so I want to also welcome everybody here. I'm pleased to see that we've got so many members attending. We've already reached quorum. I don't have any chair's comments, but I would like to just acknowledge that recently the San Juan School District has lost actually 3 students recently, 2 in a tragic event at Arden Fair Mall, and 1 also in an auto accident recently. So before we start the meeting, I would like to just take 20 seconds for a moment of silence for us to reflect, and then we will start our meeting. So just take 20 seconds now, please. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. With that, I will go ahead and go to I think with the board liaison, Dr. McKibben. He's our board liaison for the LCAP committee. I'll turn it over to him for any updates you may have.
Thanks, Tom. I don't have much. We, as is our tradition, we had one board meeting in November, and we'll have one board meeting in December, and we will continue on. I wanted to say that actually under normal circumstances, I would probably be in Anaheim tonight, but since the California School Boards Association's annual meeting was done virtually, I got done with that at 5 o'clock today, and now I'm back with you folks tonight, and glad to be here. And I'm really pleased to see that there's a quorum. Tom, thanks for recognizing our loss of 3 members from our San Juan family. Appreciate that. That's very classy. I appreciate that. And other than that, we move forward. And I'll let Kent talk about the kinds of things that we're moving forward on.
Thanks for that, Dr. McKibben, and Tom and those other members. Thank you for acknowledging those students. We also lost our culinary arts teacher at San Juan High School, had a heart attack last week and passed away as well. So along with some students, we lost a very involved teacher in our program. So it's needless to say, it's been a rough week and a half, but again, we keep moving forward. A couple of things I wanted to cover tonight. First, if you aren't aware, we did announce today that we had intended to announce by December 10th our plans for coming back. We had already said we would come back on January 5th, but in light of the surge that you have seen, even the governor's order that he took today, we communicated that we will not be bringing back students on January 5th. We actually couldn't because we'll still be in purple, or we believe we'll still be in purple. We're doing everything that we can so that once we transition to red, we would be able to, 2 weeks from the time we transition to red, bring students back in the hybrid model. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about the parent survey, as Kristen asked that you guys wanted a little bit of information about that. We do plan, as I said, to open in when it allows us to. I wanted to kind of share with you even just some of the numbers we've faced this week alone. And this is without having students in school or without having staff. This week alone, we've had 19 students test positive. We have had 14 staff members test positive. We have had student exposure of 48 students. So those students have had to been isolated. And 19 staff that have been exposed, so that are also isolating, with 4 students currently showing symptoms that we're tracking and 7 staff members. So those are the kind of things that we're watching actually each day. If you haven't gone to the district website and looked at our CAP COVID-19 dashboard, I would encourage you to do that. That has really up to the date information related to the cases with students and staff that have tested positive or that are in quarantine. So that's something that we will continue to update. In regards to the parent survey that went out, let me just share a little bit of information. Then I'll take some time for some questions, either related to the closure or this item, and then one other item. So we sent out the parent survey, probably well over a month ago, asking whether or not, in the different models that we were looking at, and we shared 3 models for the secondary, 2 models for elementary, whether it would be your intent to return to in-person or to stay in distance learning. And the district, as well as the board, really wanted to continue to have options for our community members, as that's always been, choice has always been something that we've really been proud of in this district. And we wanted to make sure that we were continuing to add choice. And so the results of those 2 various surveys came back. Elementary, there was really no variation in the models. We had about 75% that said they would return to in-person, 25% that said they would stay in distance learning. The 3 models at secondary, 2 of them had a return rate saying about 70% would return to in-person, 30% would stay in distance learning. One of them was about 4 or 5 points lower than that. And that was actually the Teachers Association surveyed their members as well. And so we after we got the information from the parent survey, after we got the information from the teachers surveying their members as well, we sat down to try and negotiate a side letter of agreement on which of those models we would implement. And it came pretty clear, and I explained this at the last board meeting as well, that when we were developing the models, all of the potential unintended consequences we didn't know because we weren't sure how many people would return. For example, we have 75%, 25% at elementary saying they're returning. There's another large urban district that had 30% saying they're returning and 70% say they wanted to stay in distance learning. Another large urban had it 50-50. So it really has varied. It isn't consistent. I think some of that has to do with potentially the models that they're offering as to whether or not they want to return. And so when we realized this in one of the models that actually the elementary teachers really preferred, and it was because it provided more in-person time for each of those students, it would have had the unintended consequence of having all of those students who wanted to stay in distance learning having to be reassigned to a new teacher. So what I shared with the board last time was potentially that would have been about 5,000 elementary kids that would have had to have had a new teacher, teachers with new students. And if that same model had been moved up to the high school or secondary schools, we would have had approximately 10,000 students that would have had to have a reassignment of the teacher when we started on January 5th, which is where we were heading at the time. And I felt very strongly, and really based on the data that we got back and the information from the parents too, we heard loud and clear, parents felt very strongly that they wanted to stay with their teachers. So we decided we couldn't come to agreement on that model, so we imposed that model. And when we oppose a model, what the union has a right to do is negotiate the impacts of that. And so we started that right away. And there's a number of issues. That very first day we imposed the model, we stayed communicating and identified what were the items that they would want to really discuss around the impacts. And so that's what we've been working through. Some of those, some we were able to kind of address fairly easy. Some of the other ones that we're still working through have to do with childcare as well as active screening versus passive screening. So those are two areas that we still have a little bit of work on. But we continue to meet with them weekly. We actually had the opportunity today, the California Collaborative on Educational Excellence had asked Deputy Superintendent Bassinelli, myself, and Shannon Brown, the Executive Director of the Teachers Association, to present. And we actually presented today on kind of the work how we collaborate, how we partner. And it was good because we got to talk through really even the current situation that we're working through as well. So that's a little bit of information on the survey and where we're headed with the various different models. The last item that I really kind of wanted to just touch on, which is really imperative for this group, I think, to understand, and we don't have the information that historically we would have wanted by now, is we may see a very significant impact, financial impact in this district related to our supplemental funding and our concentration funding. We had really been working with assembly members downtown. We still are. We're working with local lobbyists. We were hoping that they would hold us harmless, much as they did with our average daily attendance. But they've chosen not to do that in terms of our collection of the free and reduced meal applications. And it's very hard. And we've got schools putting in an enormous amount of time and energy directly contacting families, trying to get them to turn in those meal apps. But when they're not at school every day and they're not taking advantage of them, we've got a lot of people saying, or they're just not turning it in. So potentially we will see a decrease in our unduplicated count. I think that's pretty much a given based on the information that we're getting back. And your unduplicated count is a 3-year average. And once you go over that 55%, which we did last year, finally, we get concentration dollars. Well, that was about $800,000 in concentration dollars. I'm very positive that we are going to see that 3-year average drop below the 55% again. So it's very likely we will lose that $800,000 in concentration funds, as well as see a decrease in the supplemental funding that we had hoped for. We were really pushing the state saying, wait, you've already set aside these funds. They're in your budget. That was the hold harmless we were hoping for. But again and again, they extended the deadline for when we could collect those meal apps, but they have not really given us greater flexibility on that. So even as we're trying to develop our budgets for next year, and we will be presenting to the board on the 15th, the first interim budget, we will not have all of the information historically that we have had. And so trying to develop a budget around supplemental and concentration is going to be really unique and challenging this year because we have no idea exactly how much we'll get. It will also affect our Title I allotment as well. And you may hear a little bit more about that tonight in the presentation on the budget, but I just kind of wanted to front load that as well so that folks were aware of that. And then at this time, if there are any questions about any of those things, our announcement related to closing, the parent survey and the models, or that budget piece I shared, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I see Damaris, you have your hand raised. If you'd like to come off mute.
Good evening. Mr. Nelson, thank you for it. Mr. Nelson, Dr. McKibben, and Superintendent Kern, thank you for addressing the issue that of our lost students. And I wasn't aware of our staff. What I was going to ask was, there isn't anywhere on the website that kind of directs families for help. Well, let me say it differently. There are things on the website. Are there any opportunities to add culturally based, culturally responsive groups to that list for parents and kids who need to reach out? And what exactly is our protocol on this in terms of Are we reaching out? What are we doing? Because I noticed it's a little different than in the past when we've had, unfortunately, when we've lost other real students. So I just was wondering what the protocol was on that. And then my other question, Superintendent Kern, you were mentioning the need to get the meal forms filled out. Have we reached out to any community groups to try to push that? And what has the deadline been moved to? And is there any way we can help make that happen?
Well, it's challenging to have community groups get involved because you're actually dealing with personal information with families. So that really needs to stay with the school, because you're directly, at this point, we are having staff directly contact those families. And we're utilizing staff. We even said, if we've got to start paying people overtime to come in to make contact, but it's just really challenging right now when people are saying, I'm not utilizing the meal service, and we're saying, but there's more to this, it's funding. It's just a challenge right now. But the date was extended till the end of this month. And Kristen can help me with that a little bit. Previously, I think we had to have it in by like October 30th. Is that 30th, correct, Kristen?
Yeah, that was what it used to be.
Yeah.
So here's my point on that one. I get that it's personal information. Community-based organizations don't have to get the information. What you need their connection for is for them to get the word out as to why it's important. We understand why it's important and all the other things that may go along with it, but families don't necessarily have that information. And so when you're organizing the community, you're just asking them to make sure that their constituencies are aware that they should be filling this out, why they should be filling it out, and making it real to them. Because once you give them half of the reasons that we know that money and those privileges come with, parents are happy to get online. You provide them a computer right there in the field. They are happy to get online and do it themselves. You're not giving anybody their information. So that's one way that we could really tackle that without giving up anybody's information. And then I had one last question. I'm sorry. Do we know the number of the percentage of homeschool students and which areas that they're coming from in the district? And do we have any opportunity to increase that homeschool number since we're staying on lockdown? Because a lot of parents some love it, some it's just a lot. So just exploring what other options there are. Thank you.
I'm confused, Damaris, when you say homeschool.
So within our borders, we have homeschool, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Like a homeschool program, like, for example, Visions.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So I've heard some parents say that they have access to that and some parents say that opportunity is full now. There's no more room.
So here's a good example. Somebody said that at the last board meeting, and that's, and we can't respond, but I'll share with you. So we went from about 50 students in our homeschool program, which we normally do. We have over 800 in that program right now.
Right.
We went from 2 teachers to 37. We still have space in that program. We actually believe that the person that spoke at the board meeting had reached out to Visions because Visions has closed their program.
Okay.
So we continue to advertise that we have space in our homeschool program. And so we have people going back and forth. We have people that chose homeschool and it's not working out for them, so they're going back into distance learning. But we do have seats available in our distance learning program. And Damaris, I didn't answer your first question as well about the opportunities for that. If you could kind of, because I'm not sure I specifically understood that one as well, if you could send that maybe even to Laura, exactly what you're looking for, because I think there are some more opportunities that we could reach out. There has been extensive outreach, and Heather has been a part of that as well. And maybe at some point she'll be able to speak to that. I don't know if that's not on the agenda, but I think we could, in terms of the responsiveness, we could put some more information on the website as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Damaris, we have 2 more hands raised. First Stephanie, and then Beth.
Hey, you guys. So I seen the data and actually thank you, Jen, for putting it up on the main page because a lot of parents were confused on where to go. And so I sent it, that chart to a lot of parents, and it made them more aware of how many students and the staff got affected. I'm like, if we can keep that updated, that'd be great. And I'm like, tell everybody, go to your home screen of your phone, and you can be able to click on it real quick, and so you can be more aware of schools and everything else. But this comes into effect of conditioning for high school for sports. Like today was canceled, and so is it going to be canceled for the rest of the year until we return back, or we're just going to go gradually step by step until then?
So regarding that we actually are updating that site daily as much as possible. I know a lot of districts were just trying to update it once a week. Trent and his team have been doing a great job updating that daily. In terms of athletics, with the governor's order that will likely go into effect, we will not be able to be allowed to continue conditioning. In terms of whether or not sports are allowed this year, that is completely out of our control. That's the CIF's decision as to whether or not games, the California Interscholastic Federation, they did come out with an announcement earlier this week, pretty much pushing off the sports that they were planning on implementing in December, hoping to start in December and then move into January. But again, we're even trying to put up all the information about CIF as well, and letting people know the decision as to whether or not sports are going to happen is not our decision. That's at the state level with CIF.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Beth, would you like to come off mute and ask a question?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify on the whole meals applications situation. Is it a matter of just getting enough people to fill them out, or getting enough people who are eligible to fill them out?
Your percentage is based on if you have people who would have qualified for free and reduced and they don't fill those forms out, then your percentage of based on the total number of students goes down. And that's where our unduplicated, which is a combination of free and reduced, EL, foster youth, that's where that percentage will go down. And, you know, we had really started a campaign a while back about more than a meal. And that had really pushed our numbers up because we were highlighting all the aspects. Now, the challenge that we're seeing in this district is a challenge that we're seeing throughout the state of California. When I talk with other superintendents in our county, which I get the opportunity to every Tuesday, this is the reality of having students that aren't in seats, of trying to get information from them is just a whole nother challenge that we're faced with. So.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Beth. With that, we will move on to staff reports, and that will be back to Ms. Schnapp.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Mr. Kern, for those updates. I want to officially introduce myself. I'm stepping in right now. I'm the Senior Director for Professional Learning, and I'm also the Cabinet Liaison for our PAC. And as we all know, Lisa Borrego took a job with CDE, and so she started on Monday with them, and she did text me to tell everyone hello. And so at this time, we have posted the position for the LCAP director, and we are going to be holding interviews next week, December 11th, for that position. So I just wanted to make sure everyone had an update on where we were with the hiring process for our new LCAP director. Thank you, Laura.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, Kristen. I was wondering if you had any feedback or response about the possibility of maybe some folks from the LCAP being able to participate on interview panels for the next LCAP director by chance?
Yes, Mr. Kern and I did speak about it, and we felt that that would be very beneficial. And Laura did reach out to you earlier today, so she will be working with you and Tom.
Your voicemails, Heather.
I'm sorry, this season. Thank you.
No, one thing to add on to that real quick is this is a challenging time in terms of hiring. And so we only had 5 individuals apply. And out of those, one of them had an incomplete application. So it is a small pool that we are pulling from at this point in time. So sometimes people go, why so few, candidates? It is a difficult time to go out there and recruit. So I think that's important for the committee to know as well, that I think, Kristen, you've got that you'd interview 4, and that's if they'll all accept the interview, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. At this point, we are going to open it up for visitor comments. If you're a visitor and you'd like to speak, you have just feel free to raise your hand. We'll call on you and unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak. By law, we are not allowed to comment on anything you say, but you're welcome to make a comment. I know I'd like to welcome Marlene and Melina. There are 2 visitors tonight, and they are also our new PAC members once they go before the board for approval at the school board meeting on December 15th. So welcome Marlene and welcome Melina. They're so close. So if you'd like to speak, you're welcome to speak. If not, don't feel any pressure. Okay, we have no questions. At this point in time, we're going to do an attendance. I'm just going to call off all the people that I have written down. And if you don't need to respond, just once I'm done, if I've missed anybody, let me know. Okay, so I have Amber, Kenan, who had to drop off a few minutes ago, Damaris, Caroline, Elnora, Stephanie, Heather, Bethlehem or Beth, Eric, Tom, Phyllis, Beatrice, and Jacqueline. Did I miss anybody? Okay, great, thank you. So we have 12 people, 12 members currently in attendance. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Tom to address the approval of the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hopefully, see all the members will have, should have gotten a copy of the minutes in their email. And if I would entertain a motion.
Brown letter says happy holidays or something. That's
Pardon?
Christmas.
Oh, let's see. Well, so anyway, for the minutes, if I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a board member that cares to make a motion?
Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to make the first motion to approve.
I made a motion to approve the minutes.
This Beth?
Yes.
Thank you, Beth.
I second it.
And that's Stephanie?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Is there any corrections that people see or additions that they would like to see to the minutes? And I guess hearing none, we can go to a vote to approve the minutes. And Laura, how would you like to record the vote?
I'll go ahead and do a call out to our members in attendance. So if you'd like to approve, just say yes. If you want to abstain or disapprove, say abstain or that you don't approve. So Amber, do you approve the minutes?
Approve.
Thank you. Kenan's not here. Damaris?
Yes.
Caroline?
Approve.
Elnora?
Approve.
Stephanie?
Approve.
Heather?
Abstain.
Okay. Beth?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Approve.
Eric?
Approve.
Tom?
Approve.
Phyllis?
Approve.
Beatrice? Yes. Thank you, Yolanda.
Okay.
And Jacqueline?
Approved.
Great, thank you. With that, quick count, I think we have 12 yeses and 1 abstention. So minutes are approved, and let's go ahead and move on. And let's turn, at this point, we're going to do a quick community building activity. So I will turn it over to Heather.
Yay. Thank you so much. This is my favorite part. So when we, Tom and Laura and myself were meeting, we were thinking it might be fun to have a quick scavenger hunt. And so it may require folks turning on their cameras in order to, I would say win a prize, but I guess just have bragging rights, honestly, to be the best finder or scavenger in the group. And so we can go ahead. Essentially, what I will do is I will call out an item. And then whoever is able to find that item in their home or the space that you're in, and then demonstrate that on camera, will win. And we'll go through, depending, I think, on how long it takes us. I've got several fun things for us to explore, demonstrate our savviness and our scavenger hunt abilities. Before we jump in, I mean, that's pretty much the overview. Whoever gets it first is the winner. I might need a little help, actually, as I'm, maybe I can mess with my view.
Yeah, I have to scroll through the view. I have 6 at a time on here. I don't have a whole screen view.
Oh, that's silly.
Yeah.
Me too. So I think that in order, it might be not only having it in hand with your camera, but also saying me, and then we'll, or maybe your name, so we'll know who it is.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Could we stop sharing the screen for a minute and then we could see more tiles?
Oh yeah, actually, we can do that. Thank you, Caroline. There we go.
Brilliant. I feel like you won the first round.
I know, she gets the prize.
That's awesome. All right, here we go. I feel like this one is
never gave me a vote.
Warm up.
The guy that you really liked initially
has a lamp that they could show
never
us.
gave me a quote because he said
A what?
A lamp.
A lamp. A lamp. A lamp. I can do it right now.
Can we?
Right here. Lamp.
Yes. Yes. Chelsea.
Was that Chelsea?
Yeah.
I saw Darren too. Cool.
Yeah.
It's my new lamp too.
Nice. It's a nice one.
It doesn't count having one in my background already.
Oh.
No, you were too quiet and stealth-like, Tom. All right. So that was fun. All right. Next one up, a water bottle.
Oh, how about a cup of water?
Oh, Darren is killing it. Okay. This is easy. I'm going to try to make it a little harder. Okay. I don't think anyone has that. Let me see. What about a candy wrapper?
Oh.
Oh, Darren, what did you look at my list? She's killing it.
Carolyn was there too. Wow, Darren.
Carolyn got it.
Got my
We should
C's
say that
candy
staff
right
can't
here.
play.
I thought this was going to be harder, but you all are on top of it. Okay. All right.
Dumb, I cheated. Sorry.
Okay, that counts. All right. What about a basket?
Basket.
Oh, Kristen. Kristen, Barbara was a close second though, but that was good. She was on top of it. All right. What about this one is going to be really hard. Well, maybe not. I don't know. You all are really impressive. I would say, what about a needle?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's tough.
Yeah, good luck, guys.
My sewing kit is in this room.
Yeah, if you need to move to a different room, that's fine.
Check it out.
Right,
Was it Beth?
Beth.
Beth. Nice, Beth.
He got you, Chelsea.
I had my 4-year-old on my lap. That was a disadvantage.
How about a cat?
I know.
see a cat.
What's a cat? Oh, that's funny. All right. And I think maybe the final one single piece of, and this is a COVID rarity, toilet paper. Wow, Laura.
Keep it right here.
That's a whole roll.
What is it doing in your office? Can we discuss that situation?
I know. I have sanitizer, wipes, all that stuff. I thought you were going to ask for that because I keep it right here.
It's a security issue at this point. You've got to keep it under watchful eyes. Well, I love it. That was super fun. Thank you all. I feel like, I don't know, Darren, I think that you were kind of a back-to-back winner for now. So I think that maybe you can taunt us with your winning skills for the next couple of weeks. And thank you all. This is fun. I really miss seeing you all in person so much. And I'm glad we can have a little bit of time to build. So thank you.
Thank you, Heather. All right, so we will turn the floor back to Tom. He's going to give a quick update on status overview and seasons of an LCAP.
Oh, yes, thank you. One of the things of LCAP is it's a annual cycle. So normally, let's see if I got that, can bring that up. So usually the cycle would involve, as the LCAP committee comes together in the fall, kind of training and bringing especially new members up to speed on what LCAP is all about. And then as we enter the winter months and about this time, in a normal cycle is when information from like the California dashboard, we'd be getting other results at the end of semesters. Well, some information I think we would still be getting at the end of the semester of how many like D's and F's. So be able to review data. And then during the spring is when we engage other groups, present the information to the community at large and engage getting feedback, and then in the summer reflecting. So it helps to sort of put it into context of where we are, and that may actually come up in as we one of the things on our agenda is to consider a January meeting, and one of the potential future agenda items for a January meeting would be to review the data that we have available at that time, as well as what the new LCAP template, and also reviewing, because I believe it's in January, sometime in January there's revised budget information from the state and how that can impact the plan that is currently being used for this year. So I wanted to just mention that and where we are in the annual cycle of LCAP, which also ties into how it's in our bylaws. When people join LCAP, that's why we want them to have like a 2-year term. I know when I first joined LCAP, it took me going an entire annual year to really become familiar with the cycle and to understand how the meetings each month kind of fit into the overall program. So that is the sort of quick status overview I wanted to give on seasons of LCAP. And just if there's any questions that people have, go ahead and you can raise your hand. And there is other information, although, like I said, this year, because of the COVID and pandemic, then we're not really into the same type of cycle. And unless there's any questions, I will go ahead and turn over to the next agenda item, which is budget overview of parents. And I believe that's Kristen.
Hey, Tom. And joining me tonight is Mary Campbell, who is our extraordinary winner. Yes, Laura. Did you have a question, Laura?
Oh, are you saying, Laura, there was some interference for a second there, Kristen?
Oh.
It's okay now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me know if there is. Joining me tonight is Darren Campbell, who is our brand new. She just took the position of the Associate Budget Analyst. And then Barbara Gross is with us, and she's the manager for Fiscal Services. She'll be doing this first interim overview for the board meeting in December. And so she'll be kind of helping me with the budget overview as well tonight. So I just wanted to thank them both for being here. And Laura, you can go ahead and go to the next slide for me. Laura found this slide today in a meeting that she was in with CDE, and we felt it was really appropriate. And I think it really builds on what Tom was mentioning around the seasons of the LCAP and how things are so different this year, especially right now. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic on students and families and communities throughout California has been profound. Within the educational system, LEAs have been forced to adapt on a weekly or on a week-by-week basis to a myriad of evolving needs, policies, and procedures, all while attempting to ensure adequate support and resources for students, teachers, and staff, and planning for an uncertain future. And so I just think this quote is very timely for us during these times, because truly every day, as we all know, as parents and students and educators, that it's ever changing, and it can be exhausting at times. And so I just wanted us to reflect on that quote a little bit as we move into this budget overview. So Laura, you can go to the next slide. So we talked a little bit at our last meeting, and Lisa went over the budget overview and what the ed code requires of us. So typically the budget overview accompanies our LCAP, which is presented to the board in July. However,
next slide.
However, things are a little different, as we know, this year. And so for our new members, we receive funding from a variety of funding sources. There's state, federal, and local funding that we receive. And the LCAP is designed to show how these funds serve our students in order for us to be as transparent as possible with our stakeholders on how we're supporting our most at-risk students. Next slide. And then Senate Bill 98 really changed the adoption date so that it was a little bit more reflective of what's happening right now in our current situation. So this year, we will submit the budget overview to the board by December 15th, at our December 15th board meeting. And this is going to be, like Mr. Kern said, and like I said earlier, in conjunction with our first interim budget report, so that they really can mirror and explain where we are with our funding sources. So the budget overview is decoupled from the LCAP this year. Typically those go together, but because the LCAP was paused, we are going to share with you the continuity plan and the funding that has gone along with us during COVID. So you can go to the next one.
Okay, so you ready for, I'm going to stop the share briefly and pull up the budget overview report.
So just while you're doing that, so the budget overview, it's a template. I want to make sure everyone is aware that we have very little ability to change. There's not a lot of variability. We punch in the numbers. Barbara and Darren are very comfortable with this because they're numbers people, and that makes them happy. They punch in the numbers, and then the template puts together a format based on what our funding sources have been. So in our budget overview, we've specifically needed to call out and address 3 specific prompts. And so Barbara is going to address our first prompt.
Okay.
And she's going to talk us through our projected revenues by our funding sources, our different funding sources that we look at.
Okay, so the first prompt was the school districts receive funding from various sources, and she's taking it away, but the
Whoops,
Scroll back.
thank
sorry.
you. State funds under the local control funding formula, other state funds, local funds, and federal funds. The LCFF funds include a base level of funding for LEAs and extra funding called supplemental and concentration grants to LEAs. And the whole purpose of this is to explain to you where all of the funds come. If you could scroll up just a little bit, you can see that the majority of our funds in the district come from LCFF funds. If you look to the left-hand side this time, we have federal CARES money that's actually 7% of our total revenue. We received 34 million, of which we report, this is all expenditure that we have to fully expend for learning loss mitigation and protective equipment. And there are very specific purposes that we have to expend this money for. And then other federal funds, the majority of our other federal funds, 44% of this is Title I, and 35% is our IDEA special education funds. The rest is just a bunch of couple of additional titles thrown in there. That is 7% of our total. Other local funds, you can see we have this little tiny sliver of other local funds that's 1%. Included in that is donations and interest, other little, small amounts, nothing huge. Then we have our other state funds, and our other state funds really are the biggest part of that is our special education state funding. That's approximately 50% of that. This little diagram to the right-hand side shows how much, thank you, how much our supplemental and concentration grants are out of the total LCFF other funds. So you can see out of this 368 million, we have 64% is other LCFF funds, which includes all of our state funds. And then our supplemental and concentration grants is 7% of the total. Any questions? Yeah, this chart really shows where everything comes from. And below, are you talking to the next point, Kristen?
I think you were going to address prompt 1 about, scroll down a little bit, Laura. You were going to keep scrolling down. This is our general fund about what some of our expenses have been right here.
Okay. And within our district, our plan is to spend 509 million for 2021. And you can see that of this, we have 35.5 million tied to our learning continuity plan. One thing that Kristen pointed out early on, but I just want to point out again now, is that this learning continuity plan is kind of it's a part of what you guys are familiar with the whole LCAP plan. So when you see the expenditures in here, know that these are specific things that were pointed out back in March when you started this. At that time, we were in a very different state of mind and had so much uncertainty as to how we would come across additional funds, because they were saying we were going to have greater than 7% deficit. So as you see in here, we have just a piece of our total LCAP. The budgeted expenditures not included in the learning continuity plan are many. You can see we have certificated and classified employee salaries and benefits. instructional materials and resources. We have general operating budgets for your individual school sites, transportation, our COVID-19 related expenses, special education, professional and consulting services, insurance, our district operating and housekeeping to keep the lights on, keep the water flowing, and our routine repair and maintenance that is a required, you don't want your schools to fall apart. We need to spend money on them. So these expenditures were not included in the numbers that you see for the learning continuity plan, but they're part of our overall costs.
Thank you, Barbara. So now we can scroll back up, Laura. And we're going to talk about prompt 2 a little bit. I think you want to go the other way. We're going to go back to the chart.
Oh, you want to go back to the chart?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that right here.
Okay. Okay.
Go up a little bit so we can see the top. Thank you, Laura.
Got it?
So the second prompt is asking us to look at specifically the continuity plan. And one of the things, as we started to work on this, we really have to be able to separate the LCAP from the continuity plan. Our continuity plan has different funding sources. And we really, in the continuity plan, which we all reviewed at the beginning of the school year, we were able to address and talk about all of the different actions and services we were taking to support our students in distance learning and preparing for possible hybrid and in-person learning. So the continuity plan really had to be inclusive of everything we needed to do to support students during the pandemic. And so the second prompt asks us to look at what was our budget for our total budgeted expenditures in the continuity plan. And then specifically within that, what were we using to address our high needs, the budget for our high needs students. So as you can see, this just is a little graph to show you that of our 35 million within the continuity plan, the majority of our plan is really focusing on our high needs students, which include foster youth, our English learners, and our low income students. So that's just a graphic of that. So now we can scroll down, Laura, to the actual narrative for prompt 2. So in the continuity plan, we were projecting around 36 million based on the enrollment for our foster youth, English learner, and low income students. And within that San Juan district, we planned within that, back in August, to spend 34 million towards meeting this requirement for our high need students. The additional improved services described in the plan are things that we talked about as we reviewed the plan, and I'll just highlight a few of them. Providing technology and software for our students and our staff, and purchasing increased and supplemental resources for technology, things like Google Classroom Read and Write for our special ed students and our students with disabilities. Elevation was a technology platform that we purchased for our English language learners to really help them with the online platforms. We built instructional staff capacity to support newcomers, refugees, English language learners, and our long-term English learners, also known as LTEL. Supplemental support staff to meet academic and social-emotional needs of our high need students, including co-teachers, intervention specialists, instructional coaches, counselors, and advocacy teachers. So all of those were included within that plan. We increased bilingual instructional aids and repurposed them. So they're really supporting students within the classroom in a unique and different way. School community resource assistants, and then also ELD teachers that are there to support our students and our families. And then also each school site has allocations for both Title I and LCFF funding that they can really address through their school site plans, those individual needs of their school sites. So that was prompt 2. We're gonna now move to prompt 3. And prompt 3 really asks us to look at what was our LCFF and our LCAP budget for last year, And so the blue line you'll see is the total budgeted expenditures that we had for last year, which was 56 million. And our actual expenditures, what we spent on our students last year was 49. And we were on target in March to spend our LCAP funds. However, something called COVID happened, and with school closures in March, it impacted a lot of the services and the actions that we had in our LCAP plan. So our schools closing in March impacted the implementation of planned actions in the spring. As a result, we spent 89% of the budget, and the actions requiring the in-person delivery, collaboration, or professional development, we weren't able to fully implement, or we didn't need the complete funding. So I'm going to give an example. Teachers were able to come to some professional development, but we no longer had to pay for subs because we were doing it online virtually, and we could do it right after school. And so we didn't need to cover subs or pay for buildings or food or other expenditures that went along with that. So with the school closures, you know, we weren't able to fully implement some of our plans. Areas that we wanted to highlight, though, were that the actions related to our English learners and our math proficiency, which were two really big buckets for us, they were almost fully implemented, up to like 96%. So that was something that we were very pleased to see when we looked at this information. So those were the three prompts that we had to address within the within this template. And it's a very broad overview. Barbara will be going into more detail with the budget, with the first interim budget presentation at the board meeting in December. And we'd love to invite everyone to get a more granular look at our budget as well when we go through that in December. But I'm here, and Darren and Barbara are here to answer any questions you might have in regards to the budget.
We have one question for Caroline. Would you like to come off chat and ask your question, or come off mute?
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate the update on the expenditures, and I just was wondering about that 6.3 million I see rounding up now. Is that money that the district can continue to spend? In the state, we call it continuously appropriated. I don't know what we call it at a district level.
We call it carryover. And so yes, so that money is part of this year's budget. And Barbara, if you want to be more specific with that, you may.
Sure. So included in the carryover are any items that were not spent, not just for the high needs students, but anything that was from supplemental funds that was allocated but unspent. So it goes into the next year's budget. We keep it in a another resource and allocate it for the highest needs, and absolutely it's in the budget and is available this year for spending. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Heather, I see your hand raised.
No, I'm sorry. I was just reacting. I thought that was a great question. I was being Thank you.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions for Ms. Schnapp, Ms. Gross, or Ms. Campbell? Okay. Wow, you guys must have done a great job. We have no more questions. So with that, I will stop the share and we'll go back to our presentation on, I think, Tom, I think now we're at committee business, correct? On the agenda, so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All righty, let me stop and then pull it back up. Oh, actually, I think it comes to me. We actually, last month, we had a lot of interest on that UCP. So we sent, I know there were some questions that I followed up on individually with everybody, but there was a lot of interest in a few specific questions that we wanted to address tonight. We also sent you yesterday, I believe, the UCP flow chart, as well as a couple other documents that we just got from legal that it kind of has a hierarchy of first is this is what you do, then you do, go step 1, step 2, step 3, and so on. So we provided that as well. And then the last thing that we provided was a document from the Family and Community Engagement. It was a, what was the name of it, Tom?
There was a
Family and Staff Problem Resolution Guide, right? So that guide is being updated. It will be as well as their website. So once it's updated and linked on their website, we'll make sure we get back to you with that information. Thanks, Tom. I see it in your background. But last month, I think, Caroline, you asked a really good question, and other people were interested as well, as what is the definition of a protected group? Let me put this on present. Feel free to read this. I highlighted in yellow what a protected group is. I'll just pause for a moment.
Thank you.
Okay. So that was the first question. The second question was, is there a separate complaint process for special education? I reached out to legal. They said per the new regulations, the UCP no longer addresses complaints relative to special education, which are addressed in federal regulations and in Title V, sections 3200 through 320.5. And then as a side note, the California Department of Education resolves special education complaints. And then the last thing I believe Damaris brought up, and other people were interested as well, is can you file a UCP complaint at a school site if you do not have a student at that school? So per the California Code 4600, it states a complaint filed on behalf of an individual student may only be filed by that student or that student's duly authorized representative. Okay, and then last, we've got the link on here that if you want to access the web page, you'll be able to find it there. And let me just highlight that real quick. Or is that something, Tom? Can you snag that and put it in the chat box?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that. That's
got this banner covering.
Let's see, I think that's what we want.
Got it. Thank you. Great. So Tom has put the direct link to the UCP webpage in the chat box. All right. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Tom.
Okay, thank you.
I actually just real quick, I'm sorry, Tom. I have just a question that was sitting on my heart about the UCP report, and of course, being a student or a guardian, that would have to be the one to submit. If there is a suspected bullying, then that could be submitted on behalf of anyone, like a student or campus, and didn't necessarily have to have relationship, like be an authorized representative of that child, though, correct? Like just an observer or someone who's aware of bullying?
That's a good question, Heather.
Yes, that falls under, Heather, you would be able to, I would suggest speaking straight to the site administrators, unless it's involved with the site administrators. You'd want to start there at the site level.
Right. If you look at the flow chart, it requests that you start at the site level. If you don't get resolution there through the teacher or principal, we do have, and Lisa had talked about this last month, we do have a problem resolution coordinator, Liz Lopez, that you can reach out to as well. And then if you don't get any, you feel like you don't have any resolution, then you can file a UCP complaint.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly don't know though, Heather, because unless you're authorized by that student or student's parent, that's a good question. I can run that by legal.
Yeah, I think that might be, you know, when I hear the question, I think about, you know, folks on campus who may be aware, or friends who may be aware of a bullying incident, or, you know, of course, a UCP process would be different than like a bullying investigation.
Right.
And so forth. But when I hear that question, I think of, you know, what options do we have to advocate for safety on campus in general? And so that's kind of why I posed that question, just for clarity, in case that was the root of that question, since I missed the last time. So,
and just to clarify, Heather, yes, you don't have to be a legal guardian to be able to report that at a school site. If, you know, oftentimes a parent might see something that happens, and we would encourage them to let the school site know what's happening.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Yeah, I guess I would say my general impression, and you know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. If it doesn't, for example, for things that don't fit for a UCP process, that the chain of addressing the problem is, like you mentioned, it says first address it at the site level, going from typically from like teacher to then principal, and then to district staff. But then I guess from there, if there seems like it doesn't go from district staff, then I guess it would be trying to see if you can appeal to the superintendent, and from there, I guess it would be, you know, saying appealing to a board member. So working through that chain of, it seems like that is the chain of authority in the district for appealing. So for those items that don't fit into following a UCP process.
One of the things that we've been working on this last year has to do with issues related to bullying, issues related to equity and so forth. And at most of the schools we've had an increase in people because of using the whole notion of, if you see something, say something. And all teachers are mandated reporters, and anybody who's that you could talk to about the things that you see, and move it up the chain. The UCP process is, frankly, hopefully down the list, and hopefully these kinds of problems are taken seriously and dealt with very quickly at the local level. And getting to the UCP process is after that, and indeed these things will eventually come to the board on the list. And we hope to get these kinds of things resolved and taken care of much more quickly by using the processes that we've been putting together for some time yet, in terms of trying to help students understand, helping them understand, parents understand that indeed this kind of behavior shouldn't be tolerated, but needs to be dealt with, frankly, as swiftly and as fairly as one can possibly do.
Okay. So any other questions on the UCP process, or basically how to handle complaints in general inside the school district? If not, then the next item, we're in committee business now. So the next item is having to do with a possible January meeting. Our original timeline and schedule had a meeting in December and one in February. However, that schedule was put together at the beginning of, I think, before the start of the school year, and things changing as much as they are, there might be actually a number of reasons that may be useful to have a meeting in January. We expect by then there would be a new LCAP director that would be coming on board. That would be an opportunity to connect with the LCAP director. I made a list here, but feel free if you have thoughts of things that you would like, because this on committee business, in some ways, committee business and the next agenda item, future agenda items, we can basically kind of merge those thoughts and ideas. So in particular, if there are things that as committee members you would like to take a deeper dive into, then those could be future agenda items and things that we might address in January. We have, well, potentially three new members that are coming on board, and that would be an opportunity for them to meet the rest of the committee members and for the committee members to meet the new members. The California State Budget Revise is coming up in January. That new LCAP template format should be approved by the State Board of Education. And also in January, I expect there might be some data that we would have in terms of the number of students that are failing, in other words, getting D's and F's. So that would be an opportunity to get some data to inform us. And just another, and let's see if there's anything else. So it's an opportunity also to form work groups or just agenda items to take a deeper dive on things. So I'd like to get an idea of what the will of the committee is on a whole about having a meeting scheduled sometime in January. So you can go ahead and take yourself off mute and chime in if you have something to say.
I wanted a couple updates before we move forward with just more information. The template for the new LCAP doesn't come out till mid-January, so I'm afraid we won't have anything to report for this January meeting. And then depending on when we hire the new director, I'm afraid we won't be able to introduce the new director because of usually there's a 2-week period where they're transitioning into the new position. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to introduce or have that person attend. So those are just two things. And then I'm also concerned that with grades, teachers' grades aren't due until we come back from winter break. So this would be we wouldn't have time to pull that data together for a January. I would think February would be the time we'd want to share grades. So I just wanted to address those three issues. So there might be other committee business that we want to look at, but I think the other ideas we might want to look at in February.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then just to piggyback on that, the annual update template, the CDE estimates that they will have it mid-January, but they technically have until January 31st to meet the state requirements.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Well, it looks like Jacqueline Shields would just chimed in that she'd prefer to not have, I think, have our next meeting in February.
February?
Yes.
Okay. And anybody else? All right.
Caroline?
Yes, I had something to add on the data around D's and F's. In addition to the data, could we also get a sense of what the individual policies are about reaching out for student support? You know, I have had the unfortunate experience of being a parent of a student with straight Fs who was previously an A and B student and having no contact from my campus administration. So I just want to be aware of kind of what are the resources that are out there, and you know, what are we offering families?
Okay. So you'd like to suggest that as a future agenda item? Okay. So Laura, I think you're making notes of that, I expect.
Yeah, I am, and I'll pick it up on the audio when I
Okay.
review it. Mhm.
All right. Another item was PAC elections. Normally, during a normal annual LCAP cycle, elections for the chair and assistant chair would occur in June. Due to the pandemic, those elections did not occur. So I guess I would like to get a feel from the PAC as to whether they would like to have elections at our next meeting, or whether they would prefer to just continue with the current LCAP leadership and then hopefully resume the normal cycle of electing a chair and assistant chair and potentially a student chair. We have proposed changes to the bylaws, which aside from changing the bylaws to reflect that we are a Green Act committee, also would include creating a student chair position as part of LCAP leadership. So I would like to find out if the committee, what the will of the committee is as to when they would like to have the next elections. And also, Heather, is there anything you would care to chime in as far as the assistant chair position? Oh, another aspect is in the bylaws, leadership positions can be held for 2 years. For example, I was assistant chair for 2 years before becoming chair, and at the end of this year, I will have been chair for 2 years. So at that point, I would term out as being chair. So come June, at the latest, is when we expect to have elections for a new chair, and somebody other than myself would be assuming that role. So I wanted to open that up to discussion among the members regarding elections. Okay.
I wanted to chime in. I think it's important for us to make informed decision, and I believe that I believe in just being fully authentic and transparent. And so in having this conversation and really looking at the importance of LCAP in general, and especially in a time like right now, I've been sharing with Tom and Laura just something that's been weighing on me. And so I want to just be fully transparent with the PAC so that you all can make an informed decision. A unintended or not unintended, unexpected, I should say, outcome of COVID hitting. In my day job, I serve as a director on a nonprofit where we provide a lot of like basic need community crisis response and support, which is a really heavy lift in a regular season. And what we've seen since COVID is that just the needs in the community have shot through the roof in a lot of different ways that have left me like capacity, time, and focus wise a lot less present than I typically am. And I maybe I'm being hard on myself, but I also want to acknowledge the fact that there may be other folks on the PAC who may have more time and be able to be more present to lead a little bit more effectively in this really turbulent time. And so I want to acknowledge that I am willing, if no one feels inclined or desires to step up, because I know it's a kind of a scary role at times, and the LCAP is really big, and I know we've got a lot of fresh faces, but I think I would just be remiss if I didn't name that and say that I have zero ego. And I'm really here for the PAC and the well-being of our students. And I would be more than happy to support someone who wanted to take on that charge, and lead as co-chair or as chair. And so I wanted to name that. Again, I would be more than happy, and I'm sure I would do fine, right? But I think that there's so much depth that can be done and important work that can be done in these positions, and I don't want to take up space, especially if there's other folks who could do a better job than I am right now, because we're holding together a community. So I wanted to say that, and for you all to consider, as we're talking about elections, if that is a desire, then feel free. And so that's all. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Heather. And so I guess, is there anybody that has interest in taking a leadership role in the future on LCAP? Okay. Well. All right. Okay.
And we've had some members drop off.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, hearing none. Looks like Heather, you may be stuck with the job for the rest of the year then.
No, I gladly will. I just, again, believe really that just being transparent is important. And again, because it's so important, that I wouldn't want to be taking up space where someone could be, doing a better job. So thank you.
Yeah, and I will echo Carolyn's comment that I also appreciate your leadership, Heather, and what you have been able to do, and you have been supportive, and so I do want to acknowledge that and say thank you.
Yeah, I would never characterize you as taking up space.
I know.
Thank you. Oh, you guys gave me a feeling.
Oh. Stephanie did put in the chat box. Stephanie, she's interested in helping Heather or possibly co-chairing.
Oh, okay. All right. Good.
Wonderful.
So, all right. So Stephanie and Heather can, I guess, connect offline on what they may want to do or how they may want to proceed in that area. Okay.
Stephanie's a rock star, so let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, next item I have is bylaws review. So we have a bylaws review work group that met. We went over the changes to the bylaws. As I mentioned, one of the most significant ones is updating the bylaws to reflect that we are a Green Act committee. And also to put in verbiage. And luckily we had Kenan as part of as a student and a member of the work group on the bylaws. So we put together some verbiage there for having a student member. I'm not entirely sure what the process is for having these bylaws move forward to become formally and official. At some point, they would have to go before the school board. So Dr. McKibben, do you have any insight there as to what may be the process for getting bylaw updates officially before the board for approval?
And I can help with that too, Dr. McKibben, if you.
Oh, you're on mute right now.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Dr. McKibben. Is he talking? Dr. McKibben, you're on mute.
You're right. Kristen, why don't you go ahead and I'll add, there's some things that I think we need to make sure, remember that the total is 20 and we want to keep people from the targeted groups on the committee. We need to make, there needs to have good transitions in terms of and I had some, and Tom knows I have some concerns related to the somebody automatically going to a 2-year term rather than completing the term of the person they're taking the place of, because it might end up with people more than 20 on the committee and so forth. So there's some things that I saw as problematic in terms of what is proposed. But Kristen, please go ahead with the
Yeah, I think with that in mind, once we do have the draft revision that you guys want to bring forward, we would then take it to legal counsel and they would look at it to review the bylaws and give feedback for us before we took it to the board. So that would be the next step.
Okay, so the draft revision that our work group put together, is that something we should submit now, or do we want to have a vote of the members as to whether they want to have that move forward and get a consensus among the entire PAC, or should we or should I work with Dr. McKibben to perhaps put some of the concerns, address some of the concerns in the bylaws and make some of those revisions? For example, when you mentioned having the demographic makeup of the committee reflect it, that hasn't been in the bylaws. Is that something that Dr. McKibben you'd like to see codified in the bylaws?
It's in the laws.
Oh, it's you're saying it's already in the bylaws?
No, it's not in the bylaws, it's in the law.
Oh, okay, right, all right. But is that it's already in law?
If you wanted it in the bylaws, you could put it there, but it's not necessary when anything that's in the law is by definition law.
So
Okay.
and tonight this is a discussion item, so we can't do any votes tonight. We just need to have a discussion. And I'm not sure Tom has the PAC in its entirety seen the revised bylaws.
Well, I sent it out actually today, so it hasn't given them time.
It hasn't had a discussion by the group, which I think would be a very appropriate thing to do now.
Okay. All right. Well, currently, currently, I guess we can see the members that are currently here. Has anybody taken a look at them, and other than the review committee that they have items they would like to bring forward? Okay. Or I guess what we can do then is put it on the agenda as an action item for our next meeting to approve the draft of the bylaws. And in the meantime, I guess that gives us some more time where I can work with Dr. McKibben and potentially go back to the review committee if there's additional adjustments.
Tom, is it possible for me to make a comment? This is Phyllis.
Oh, yes, certainly.
So, in number 11, when it talks about the vacancies, one of the reasons why you have a 2-year term is so that there's a staggered membership. So you might have a couple new members, each year. But if you have a committee replacement that is going to start their own 2-year term, you could end up just having a lot of, vacancies at odd times. It makes sense that if there was a vacancy, and let's say I took over your role, I should be then in your term and then come back up for a reinstatement, so to speak. So that was just a question that I had under number 11.
Okay, good. I appreciate that.
And that appears to have been added. So that's a change from the original bylaw. That was an addition. Am I correct in how I'm seeing that?
Yes, that is correct. So, and actually Laura brought it up earlier today too, that there's situations where somebody may leave after completing, say, a year and 6 months. So we were thinking in part of a situation where then you have somebody come on board, and then do they only serve for 6 months? That doesn't seem like that fits well. So
Tom, in those circumstances, that has happened in the past, and those people, seek reappointment, and if their attendance has been reasonable, it is given, and they get they complete the 6 months of in this hypothetical your term, and then would get another term if indeed their attendance has been reasonable.
Okay.
And does that count as the part of the 3 consecutive terms, or I forget what the wording was here?
Right.
Yeah. Yes, you would. That person might indeed end up because they're appointed and then they're reappointed. In that case, twice. I believe you may want to clarify, but generally you get 2 reappointments in the way that I read the bylaws.
Okay.
Okay. So now
that's correct.
Potential. You're not guaranteed them, because, but you have 2 potential reappointments.
Okay.
And then I think if we're talking about that, then that goes back to number 10, which was struck out. The terms shall be staggered so that there'd be 11, because it just gets very cumbersome if we're always trying to fill different positions in. There's a reason why we try to have half of the membership, no more than half of the membership, try to be reelected or reappointed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would concur with that. Item 10 deletion really struck me as potentially causing some just operational issues with the way that the committee operates. I mean, I'm a new member. I've been here. This is my 2nd school year, and I consider myself a seasoned bureaucrat. And it has been very difficult to follow along, and just the learning curve on all the new terms, all the new budget pieces. It's a lot to ask, and if you don't have that continuity of service and of learning, I think it's really hard.
Yes, and just one of the other things too, Carolyn, to your point, is because of the pandemic and everything that has transpired since then, is we have not been able to do a new member orientation this year, and I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I greatly enjoyed having that opportunity last year, and it was really a great foundation.
Maybe that's something we look at doing in January instead of in lieu of the meeting.
Oh, yes. Okay.
It's a pretty good idea, Laura.
Yeah.
Can I also ask a question? I have not seen the bylaw revisions, and in hopes of us being transparent and having this open to the public, I'm not sure why this hasn't been posted and sent out with the agenda so that everyone has an opportunity to give feedback on this, because I know I haven't seen it, and what we discussed here should be public. So I feel like Laura should have been able to send this out, as a public document. So Tom, can you address that?
Yeah, okay, that sounds good, because it sounds like we should go back and relook at that section and make adjustments in terms of the terms anyway, and then have that prepared as a document that will go out for our next official meeting. So that gives time for the public to take a look at it and review it.
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
And I do think that, I know that it is a part of law on how this committee needs to be put together in terms of stakeholder groups. But I think it is also beneficial to include that information, because some people may not be aware of those legalities. And so it's just better to have that information in more places than not. And that way, if they are just looking at these bylaws, then they'll know, oh, there's representatives that go across the different stakeholder groups.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is
I agree.
probably include perhaps some of the verbiage that's actually in the ed code regarding representation, and include that in the bylaws themselves.
Even if it's a reference to the statute, sometimes that's at least helpful, because it does, I agree, lend support and clearly identifies that as a priority for this committee.
Okay.
This is Chelsea, Tom.
Yes.
At the next meeting too, if you could just prepare like a 5-minute presentation of the changes that are being proposed for the entire committee to consider, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. All very good input.
So again, this goes back to possibly looking at doing a January meeting to really break them down and have discussion and vote on them. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would say our next meeting, which my impression is the consensus of the committee was not to have a January meeting.
Yeah, so that's true. So possibly an orientation. Okay.
Yeah. And the orientation, so the orientation would be optional. I suppose what we can do is send out and put together an orientation for, because we'll have 3 new members, but also invite any other members that may want, say, a refresher.
Yeah, Tom, we've had probably a half a dozen or so members that haven't had an orientation. So we might invite anybody that has not had an orientation. And if somebody wanted to come that has had the orientation, I would certainly think they would be welcome.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, for putting together the orientation, is that who should be, I guess, involved in putting that together? Or I guess I'll work with Laura on that.
Yeah, work with Laura, that I'd be glad to help, that we may want to have somebody from legal there. Who traditionally, Laura, in the orientations you've been with in the past, who has been there?
It's so funny. My second day with the district in this position, I attended the orientation. So let's see. I honestly don't remember. I don't remember. It was a Saturday morning. It was Adam. I'd have to go back and look at the attendance to see what other staff were there.
But yeah, I would think it would be the chair, co-chair, Laura, and somebody from staff would be.
We might want to wait until we have a new director.
Maybe even a member.
That's true. That's a good point too.
Just so that they can participate with us. I think that might be a nice way to get everyone on the same page.
I agree.
That's a good idea.
So that would be late January or possibly even February is what you would expect, Kristen?
Now, I would think maybe the 3rd week of January even, Tom. It just depends on how long it takes to get the person hired.
Okay.
Onboarding.
Yeah, but having the new director would be, I think, one of the critical elements in the orientation.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. So I will work with Laura, on that.
Maybe
And
possibly Susan Green from to talk about assessments and the dashboard.
yeah, because that
option.
that would help with putting together the orientation to help direct what sort of data we use in terms of looking at things for making recommendations. Okay. All right. And oh, okay. See, I'm seeing if there's any comments in the chat. Thank you, Carolyn, for reviewing them, and Stephanie. All right. Next item. Oh, yes. Open membership. Update on membership attendance. So currently, we've got three positions that are vacant. So that's one reason our quorum is now 9 members. And there's 2 members that hopefully will be approved by the school board at the next meeting on December 15th. So that will bring us back up to, I think, 19 members. And the final 20th position would be approved at, I guess, potentially at the following board meeting. And is there a board meeting then in January? Yeah, I guess there is.
There's two meetings in January, 2 meetings, actually, yeah, 2 meetings in January, 2 meetings in February, I believe, too.
Okay, so the next time that we meet for an official meeting in February, we would be back up to 20 members is what the expectation is. Is there anything else that you want to say, Laura, concerning membership attendance?
No, I think we're great. The 2 open positions that we have, of the 3, we've got 2 filled, and they will go before the board on the 15th for approval. And we're still reaching out to fill that 3rd position from our previous list of applicants.
Okay. Well, then then I guess the meaningful community connections, which is an agenda item that I think Heather wanted to speak to. So looks like we have time to address that. Heather, do you want to take that agenda item now?
I don't know. I think I kind of want to check in with the group and see, because it was something that we were going to, I mean, I could definitely set the stage about what it is, but I also want to recognize it's Zoom and folks may have Zoom fatigue. And I think it's a pretty important conversation. So I don't know, folks, do we want to move that agenda item maybe to the next meeting and call this meeting tonight? Or do you all want to have this agenda item, because I recognize that it's almost 8 o'clock and you all may be tired.
Wow, this is early. We usually go to 8:30.
I know. You all have a preference? I could definitely set the stage about the agenda item. I guess that might be helpful. So essentially, when we had public comments, I believe it was maybe last month, there was a kind of a notice made to the fact that there, tends to be some difficulties, challenges in, getting folks to apply for LCAP buy-in, or not apply for LCAP buy-in, for LCAP participation. Now I'm making more sense. And just, attendance can be inconsistent at times, so on and so forth. And I think one of the suggestions from the public comment was to maybe look at engaging with the folks at the school site council who are already, essentially kind of like civically engaged within the school district. And I think that conversation just kind of led us to Tom and I and Laura subsequently to a deeper conversation about, that's a great observation, but I'm not convinced that the solution would necessarily, like a long-term inclusive solution or responsive solution would be just in leaning into tapping into school site council, because what we know is that school site council may not necessarily represent our unduplicated student groups. And when we're thinking about equity and finding solutions, we want to make sure that our LCAP PAC, group is actually representative of the folks that we're making decisions for, right? And so, but it is something that we could definitely explore and discuss. And, there's lots of different things that we could, our opportunities or strategies to engage and, build community capacity and interest on the LCAP PAC, possibly, participatory action research, different modes of community outreach. I have no idea the solutions would be endless or the possibilities, but we really wanted to have just a conversation around ideas and thoughts that folks may have about how we can engage more inclusively and consistently with students and parents to participate in meaningful ways at the LCAP table. And so that was just kind of the condensed version. I probably went on and on for a long time in talking with Tom and Laura about this, but that's it in a nutshell. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess time permits, if you all have any ideas or thoughts around how we can build a stronger connection, and a more, kind of spreading our net pretty wide, and having diverse representation, and building community capacity. Because I think one of the points that we did discuss was the LCAP is a beast, right? And an important and integral part for a meaningful LCAP is that, we have meaningful participation from the community, but it doesn't necessarily translate, right? And so how do we bridge that gap? So I don't know, that's setting the stage. Those were the thoughts and considerations. And I just want to open it up for conversation and for folks, if you have any input.
Yeah, I think when we spoke about it, one of the things I recall, I seem to recall you mentioning, is whether to really get that connection to the community and figuring out how to do that. I think you mentioned like a task force, taking a task force approach, that would be the, I guess, mission, as I understand some of the conversation we had previously.
Well, yeah, I don't know about mission, because I think that it would require group consensus. I think just those were considerations and ideas that I was bringing to the conversation, but I think that, we'll find better solutions or ideas as a group. So yeah, absolutely. That was one thing that was discussed as a possibility, to really explore what is the barrier, right? And so
one of the things, Tom, either that I would be curious about was to the current membership, to the people who came in, and as Heather said, that the enormous amount of stuff that that an LCAP member kind of has to have at least an acquaintance with is pretty daunting, and the questions that I would like to ask, so that we can, it may be to improve our orientation or improve our call for members and that sort of thing, so that people know more what they're getting into. The two questions that came to my mind were what, as members, would you have liked to have known about LCAP before you applied for it? And so similar, maybe asking the same question in a different way. What were the surprises to you, and how can we help you become more comfortable with the kinds of knowledge that you need to have to be a good LCAP member? I don't know that we've ever asked those questions, and I think it's time that we did. So I defer to you, Tom, on how we should post those, whether now or the next meeting or what.
Yeah, well, let's see. Well, Carolyn, she had some comments earlier about how daunting it was, and being a seasoned, I believe you referred to yourself as a seasoned bureaucrat.
That's correct. Lovingly.
So you might have some insights there that would provide a fresh perspective on what we might do.
I mean, I really have to give you guys kudos for the orientation process that we went through last year. I mean, I did feel it was able to communicate the scope of what the LCAP committee was about, what our tasks in front of us were. I think COVID has just put a huge crimp in it. I mean, I think it's just, you can't replicate those kinds of meetings that we were having in person online. It's very difficult. And I think that we also have to recognize that throughout our school communities, people are struggling with survival. People are struggling with just day-to-day existence. And, I don't know if I understand why the 2 years commitment, and I think it's important. But I also think that we need to perhaps think about a way to also include someone who can't make that time commitment, but who also has a valuable perspective to share.
Yeah, with the turnover in it, as Laura said, it seems to be quite common that we have replacements throughout the year. So a orientation that was previously our onboard and orientation was sort of geared with the idea that our membership would be quite stable, and that having an orientation at the beginning of the year would suffice, and that members would continue to stay, and that you wouldn't have new members joining after the orientation and then kind of coming in cold, as the couple of members are now. So whether they're perhaps having a orientation process that could be given at any time to compensate, I guess, for the turnover that we have of membership throughout the year. Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
I just, Amber had her hand raised too, so I just wanted to
Oh,
do,
I'm sorry,
I wasn't sure if you were.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Amber.
Thank you. I want to answer sort of all three of the questions that were posed here. Heather opened up asking about school site council. And I do think I'm a little burnt out tonight, so it might be a better conversation for starting with maybe next time. But it catches my attention because I also participate on school site council at Star King, and I've been having this vision or like ultimate dream of like a parent group. I know like PTA is not a thing anymore, but what we're wanting to do is connect with community, and we need to be able to push more information out to parents. I hear Heather, and I agree that I don't think school site council is necessarily representative of the school community, but I do think that there are ways that we can perhaps strengthen information shared. I know Greta, I am a big fan of Ms. Schultes at Star King. She's invited me to come to staff meetings before. So like those kinds of things, I think that they're just, and I've said it before too, were it not for man, honestly, I wouldn't have the access to the information that I have. I wouldn't have the access to all of you the same way that I have. Man kind of opened up that door for me. And I think that that's kind of like when Damaris asked a little bit earlier about CBOs and how are we linking that. I think that that's how CBOs can come in. I think that that's how us individually being really engaged in the school district can be thinking about that. So I really appreciate that question. And at a time when I'm not so burnt out, that would be something I would like to explore. I do think that, you know, we've said before, it's hard to find a time that works really well for people. I also like juggle many things through the day. And so by the end of the day, some things, telling on myself a little bit, are a little in one ear, out the other, as much as I try. But you know, it is a little bit about having so much going on through the day, and then your capacity, your mental capacity at the end of the day is spent. A lot of the time I don't turn on my camera because I'm cooking dinner while we're having this meeting. And so it's just those kinds of things of juggling as being a parent. So I appreciate that question. I would love to explore that more. In terms of orientation, I would agree with Caroline and Beth. I think that acronyms, like cheat sheets around that, are really great. But I actually also think that I had a great sort of orientation experience. I understand what's going on. I think that like I said, it's just the time of day, the mental capacity that kind of inadvertently impacts engagedness or being on the spot with, like, you know, the tough questions that really move the conversation along. That's just my truth, telling on myself, like I said, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm here to stay though, but that's kind of where.
Thank you, Amber. So we have two more raised hands. Phyllis, you're next in line, and then Stephanie.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a couple ways to try to address this, because it's a universal issue in every school and every district on how to get meaningful participation from different stakeholder groups. But one, if there was a presentation that could actually be online that could introduce parents to the LCAP and what does that mean and what does it involve, then that way they can, at their own time, look through that presentation, get some information. If they're still interested, then they can inquire, you know, for more information. So I think that's one way to try to address getting different people involved, especially those who may not be parents. You know, maybe they're community members and they want to be involved. I also think that to go beyond the school site council or the parent club and just talk to the principal, talk to the administration and say, do you have some parents who could represent your special ed group or the advisory committee? You know, those are some other ways that you can try to get another parent. Generally, you don't want to be on two committees, so therefore, you know, you want to pick and choose, but you could, it's a friend, you know, that's word of mouth. Another one is to go out to actually some of these community organizations, and they have kids, they have employees that have children within the district. They have a different outlook, so that if we're looking at trying to look at the foster youth and how can we connect it, well, let's go to where the foster youth are actually located and see if we can, you know, pull in if there's any people within that organization who could help give a viewpoint. That, you know, that could also be a helpful way to get some different voices to the committee.
Thank you, Phyllis. Stephanie?
Okay, so I totally agree with Phyllis in her statement that she had made. I was taking I didn't really think that. So last year I went with Family Engagement Department, Melissa and Benita, to the conference in Reno for 3 days. And it was a big eye opener for, it was the Institute for Education and Leadership. And I took it, and Kim actually went too. And so they gave us a lot of good information on how we can engage with our community and families. And so some of the things that I have taken back with me. I had to really think back. I'm like, Stephanie, really good. I probably end up emailing it to you guys, but I had to really look upon some of the things that I've been talking to parents who's here at home and writing down like their concerns, or they'll just write down a little sticky note of concerns, stick it on my door, or they'll text it to me or anything else. So then I know they're not busy, but I'm trying to figure out a way where they can just go and click on like a little app site or like a little sticky note of their concerns. If they can't feel like they can join like a leadership group like LCAP or anything else. Because I know a lot of parents that want to, but they can't. So I'm trying to figure out a way, and I don't want to I feel that we are kind of like neglecting or ignoring parents, their concerns or feedback or probably the good creative ideas, and they don't get a chance to express that. So I kind of I've been trying to focus on how can we engage with more of the community. This is the students as well, because they're on Instagram talking in chats and everything else. And they don't like this, or they do not like this, but how can we engage with them more if if their schedule is tied up, but they want to be able to be a part of leadership. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they just feel like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to just wait until I'm become available. But they might have something, a resolution or like that can solve something, but it's just like it's hidden. And even though I don't know, it's just it's that point. I just see it a lot, and it's occurring a lot, and it becomes a frustration where nothing gets done. So I would like to feedback more on the community of how can we still engage them if they're not available to be on part of any kind of leadership team, as well as the school site council, like a person has said, they have meetings monthly. So if we can get their input from school site councils on like a sheet or app, whatever, and have them turn it in, that would be good. And as well as PAC, their meeting, if they have any concerns, whatever, which is linked. Because I know I talk to Kimber a lot, so it's kind of like a mixed thing. So things that she tells me is like, okay, I feed back to LCAP, and so how can we engage more of those other site groups into LCAP if they're not able to become available? So that's it. I just want to tell you that.
So I see Carolyn had a question in chat. Does San Juan have a family resource center? I know that we used to. Actually, at one point in time, I think every school site, there was a goal of every school site having a family resource center, but that was several years ago. And I think since then, a number of them have closed down their family resource centers. But that might be something that somebody else can respond to from the district.
We shouldn't forget the FACE group and all of the orientation that they do of parents and so forth, and the different kinds of classes that they give. May be a very good place to look for potential people on this kind of thing, and orient the people that are teaching those courses that are offered by FACE as a potential recruitment area and a way to orient parents to groups like this.
Dr. McKibben, thank you for saying that. I was actually getting ready to name that the FACE group is actually how I became aware of the LCAP.
Right.
We our organization was having a neighborhood barbecue, and they came out and they were talking to, you know, the families that were there and the students that were present, and just the way that, you know, community speaks a different language than systems or institution, right? And so to be able to have just like a really comfortable, authentic conversation about, you know, what even is LCAP and why is it important, and you know, what are the opportunities to meaningfully participate at a systems level to impact, you know, our students. that really shifted just even me being aware, as much work as I was doing already in the community and as connected as I felt I really had no idea. And so that was really impactful. And I was leaning to last year as well when we had an event where Adam and some of the LCAP folks, even some of the board members came out to Encina and engaged with the youth at one of the youth pop-ups on campus. And we had maybe 3 or 4 youth who started participating at the LCAP meetings in really impactful ways because they saw themselves in the process. If that makes sense, it was like, oh my gosh, this is important. I have an experience and I have a voice, and folks are listening to me and they care about my input. And so I think that there's something to that, right? Like having authentic community engagement, and really making sure that folks are aware in community language, because LCAP has a lot of really complicated terms, right? That can be a little intimidating without understanding the how and the why, if that makes sense. So
I wonder if it would make sense from, you know, from a district perspective that when we have a new LCAP director come on board, and at the same time, I believe we'll have a new FACE director come on board, and that the need for the FACE department has put on I believe it's called a Parent Leadership Academy in the past.
Right.
So having a coordination of FACE with the LCAP director, and also I'm thinking with, I believe it's Gwen, who at the district level oversees school site councils and is involved in whatever training is given to parents and school site councils. So having a coordinated effort for training parents for both school site councils, which can be one potential stepping stone towards being a PAC member, whether putting together something there of a coordinated orientation, I guess, program, if you want to call it that, or taking the existing Parent Leadership Academy and perhaps enhancing that with coordination from input for gearing it towards parents on school site councils as well as parents on other district committees, not just LCAP, but I would say perhaps facilities and curriculum and standards and CAC. So then getting input from all of the people that deal with parents that serve as volunteers on these various committees, councils, and to come up with a good overall training orientation, I guess, program. I mean, it seems like that could be something worthwhile for district staff to take a look at doing. So I'll simply pose it there and see if district staff thinks that's something that is feasible or would be worthwhile.
I think that anytime we find solutions without engaging and getting the solutions directly by the folks most impacted, we're going to fall short on finding the most effective solution. And so I think, I would just be remiss if I didn't kind of name that in terms of like, as we're kind of exploring and sharing and considering, that was one of the reasons for kind of the mention for a task force or some sort of participatory action research project so that we could effectively engage with folks from different walks of life's cultures and representing our unduplicated student groups to really explore, from a different perspective, like what are the barriers, right, to engaging, and how can we like either shift our process, or it might be something that we're totally not even thinking about that could be an easy fix or low hanging fruit by comparison to some of the fights that we're fighting that could really shift the trajectory and create really strong pipelines for parent participation. I also want to name that when we're talking about, institutional barriers, issues, racism, all of those things, and we're talking about moving that needle forward, like kind of a symptom that is kind of well recognized is that, when community has to adjust to a system, that's probably not the most responsive thing. And something I only name that because we're talking about getting parents prepared to participate in a process that was made for them to lead. And so I think that there are also ways for us to explore how we can change our system and process to really be centered in community and cater to community needs rather than getting parents and youth and students prepared to participate in a process that isn't centered around them. If that makes sense, there shouldn't be a gap in capacity and understanding. And I realize that, systems change is a long process at times, but I just want to name that because and having conversations with community folks, oftentimes when we're talking about board engagement or things like that, something I hear often is, oh, well, we have to get the youth prepared, or we have to get the parents prepared. They're not in a place where they're ready to navigate that system. And to me, that's a problem because parent participation and student participation is essential for the system to function well. And so I wanted to name that as well. It truly is an equity issue. And I think that there's some short and long-term goals that we could probably come up with to really try to dig deep and figure it out.
Yeah, thank you. And I was, I realized I neglected to mention that if that was something where you were able to pull together those district resources, that it would be pulling them together for a program or orientation that where they would then engage with parents and students to be part of the foundation of putting that together, something that would be meaningful from the parent and student perspective, in particular for the parents, by whether it's connecting with parents by tapping into resources that MAN, for example, or other community-based partners would be able to bring parents into the task force, if you want, a potential task force that would be designing this.
You're on mute, Kristen.
Thank you, Caroline. So Heather, is this something you want to bring back as another agenda item, or invite a smaller task force to dig into this? I think it's a really important topic, and I think it's something I think the committee might want to revisit.
Yeah, I think if the committee finds value in either revisiting it at another time and or creating a task force of some sorts, I think either option would be fine. I agree. I do think that it's important. But also I think I just would want group consensus to make sure we're allocating our limited emotional and mental resources in the best way possible.
Yeah. And while also sort of addressing what it, I believe in our bylaws, it says, addresses that our committee should be working with things that fall into a board priority. So, and that there are staff resources, because, so I guess between now and perhaps our next meeting can check and make sure that for this to occur, with putting together a task force, it would require resources from the district and support from the board, and making sure that we have that support from the board and the resources available in the district to put together something like a task force that would address this. So. Okay, let's see, any other comments? Or I guess.
I think we're good. Are we ready to move on to future, future agenda items?
So I guess we'll go ahead and put down, Heather, would you agree we should go ahead and put down meaningful community connections? Because I think we've kind of laid some good foundation work here to potentially hopefully continue to move the ball down the field or progress with this.
Yeah, I feel like it would be worthy of us revisiting, and to honor Amber's request, maybe earlier on in the in the meeting agenda, so that we have the energy to meaningfully invest.
Mm-hmm. So meaningful community connections as a future agenda item, and also I guess approval by the entire committee of revisions to the bylaws. And in the meantime, I will expect to try to coordinate another meeting of the bylaw task force to address some of the things that came up during this meeting regarding that section of terms and how to adequately address that. And let's see, and also now if there's any other items for future agenda items that people would like to suggest, I think now is a good time to do that.
Caroline, she has her hand raised.
Hello. Now, I just put a lot of the, just ideas that were coming to mind as I was hearing everyone share. And some of them, I think, especially around the topic of this being kind of such an off year in terms of the context of the work of this committee, that, if it was possible then to kind of to bring at least the groups that have been doing the work that's funded through the LCAP, to bring those groups in to share about what they have been doing, how has it changed during, the pandemic. At least that would give the LCAP a sense of what is it that we're funding. Because I think personally, I felt like we left off at the point, right at the point where we were going to start to really dig into those discussions about what we can do as a district. And I still really don't know, it's like I have my orange binder still and I can go through and look at what it is that we funded, but that isn't the same as getting a presentation and hearing from somebody who went through the program and can speak to the impact on their life.
Mm.
All right. Okay, I see Stephanie has her hand raised, so.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So usually twice a year, we have the data walk. And unfortunately, we're kind of like on pause about that. So one of the agenda items I was thinking, how can we create a different way to still possibly have the data walk? But I don't know how we're gonna do that. But we have to do it virtually. Really, honestly, we probably have to do it virtually. Or just with the school site, I know just like how the tables are set up and everything else, how we have the school involved. How can we include the schools to be involved and still have the data walk? Because it's like, we don't want to skip out on things that we normally do and to review those issues, concerns, and creative ideas. And by putting them on hold because of this pandemic. It's like, don't let the pandemic delay or delay us to keep moving on. It's like, just figure out a creative way to still get things done. And so, and plus the people that's new, they kind of don't have the opportunity to experience that what we normally do in person. So how can we figure out a way of still engaging in having this activity and getting schools involved like that? So that's my main thing too.
I think Kim put in the chat box, we could do it virtually with breakout rooms and multiple sessions.
Well, it's at our February meeting. I think some expectation is that we'll be able to get some data from Susan Green, and then that I guess what she presents there, then that would give perhaps a good idea of whether it might be able to do something like a virtual data walk for the community sometime in the spring. But I guess this year, it seems like we're just kind of, making up things as we go along according to what the pandemic allows us to do. And hopefully, of course, hopefully there will be more opportunity for people to meet in person. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's something that that staff, I suppose, will be potentially considering. I don't know, Kristen, do you have any idea of what sort of community engagement might be called for between now and June?
I think you brought up some really good ideas, and I think we're going to have to approach it differently for sure. So I think, I think maybe in February, when Susan is able to give us some of the data, perhaps at that point we can talk about how do we want to engage with our school sites. And that might be something that we can have some discussion around, because I really want to kind of honor what Heather said as well around how do we make this meaningful for our communities, because really what we need to do moving forward is listen to our communities about what their struggles are, because I think, our data is going to really tell us a story, and that can help guide us as we move forward around what our students, our most at-risk students, need moving forward. So I see a lot of opportunity in the spring, and I think we have some different unique ways that we can still hear from our parents and how they're doing, and our students.
Okay. All right. Any other items, or should we go ahead and move towards adjournment? It's almost 8:30 now, which is our regular ending time. Thank you, Phyllis, for your comments. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Laura, and we'll try and get back to you and answer any questions you may have or concerns. So anyway, I want to say thank you to everybody for attending.
Oh, would you like to make a motion to adjourn, Tom?
Sure. I'll make a
Alright,
motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
Oh,
Is that you, Caroline? Carolyn? Okay.
All right.
Tom.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any parting comments? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and I really appreciate it. I think we got some good data, good information, and we can look forward to seeing that written up in the minutes, and we'll use that for making decisions on our next meeting of future agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.